Steel clashed and blood was spilled. The skies burned red from the fires unleashed by the archangels who had come down to bring justice. Inanna was standing close to her father, who observed the madness below. Next to her stood her brother, Atuman. He had the same olive-green eyes of their father and the same red-blonde hair of their mother. After a while of listening to the sounds of wailing parents and clashing swords, their father turned away from the sight. With brisk steps he came closer to crouch down to be even with his children's heights. He put one hand on each one's shoulder, looking at them full of pride. Inanna felt rage well up inside of her. She knew the archangels would come for her father. They would take him away from her. She hated them. She hated them even more than the weak mortals scurrying around like rats. "They will come for me soon, my children," he spoke without grief or grimness. His whole demeanor was crowned by his defiant pride. "And I want you to escape their bloodthirsty blades, to carry on my legacy." "We should fight with you, father," Inanna countered, confident that her skills would suffice. But Atuman shook his head. "No, sister. We are no opponent for Micah. We have to remain in the shadows while we sharpen our skills." "Atuman is right. You are my only way to freedom, and I don't want you to be harmed." Their father gave them one last look. Then he rose up to fly into the raging battle. "Go, my children. Go and become their masters." Micah was already meeting Samyasa mid-air, his sword brandished and the face stone cold. The young Nephilim knew she hated the archangel before he had even started to attack. Micah's silver eyes blazing with self-righteousness made her boil inside. Her soul longed even more for revenge when she saw how easily her father was struck down, which caused him to crash into the ground. Inanna didn't resist when her twin brother dragged her along into the forest and down the slope. She knew they would find them. Their mixed blood, the angelic heritage, gave them away. If they wanted to succeed in escaping, they had to dim their powers. She saw Gabriel not far from them, circle in the sky, watching, looking for Nephilim. She didn't know if it was dread or hatred that made her tremble. "We have to discard our powers, brother." Atuman stopped dead at the suggestion, looking at her with wide eyes. "Only until the storm is over," she implored him. "I will find a way to replenish them again." Inanna knew Atuman trusted her like his own eyes, and she trusted him in the same way. "I know you will." Taking shelter under a large fern, they sat down opposite each other. The legs crossed, they went into a state of trance. When Inanna saw the strings connecting her to heaven and earth, she hesitated. Her instinct warned her to not cut off part of her being, but they had no choice. It was the only chance to survive. Determined, she took her blade and cut the ties to her angelic powers, which drifted away into the materialistic world in the form of a bright golden-white blast. The trauma of the loss let her snap out of the trance. A strange hollowness made itself known in her soul. Yet she found comfort in the thought that it would only be for a little while. When Atuman snapped awake, he was shaken by the rush of emotional loss. "Don't think about it, brother," she shook the screaming Nephilim. "We will get it back, you hear me? We will get them back." Atuman was still breathing heavily, but stopped making such a noise. She never thought he would be closer to humanity than she was, but it seemed her brother wasn't as strong as they both had assumed. Because the discarding of his powers had left him disoriented, Inanna took the lead. They had no time to waste on recovering from something that trivial. Behind the forest, the wasteland where the archangels and the giant Nephilim had battled opened up. The bodies of creatures more beast than man littered the ground, some as large as a mountain, some with claws and the body of a lion. The mixing of man and angel had brought forward many different marvels in the form of Nephilim. Inanna felt nothing at the sight. They had been mindless monsters. They could be controlled, but never control, and someday she would find similar servants. They were making for the fields behind the battlefield when Atuman pushed her into the ruin of a collapsed house. By the time she got up, she saw her brother's body hit the ground. A sword was buried in his back up to the hilt. Inanna felt eons pass from the impact of the weapon until the body had fallen. Suddenly afraid, she hid in the shadows, the eyes glued to the motionless shell that had been her brother only seconds ago. The attack was followed by the landing of two angels, one with long white hair and armor, the other with blue-white garments and a gentle though hostile voice. "It's Samyasis' boy. He's the spitting image of his father," the one in armor said in a voice booming with justice, pulling out the fiery sword without any compassion. "Do you think he was the last one?" the other one asked. "The last one to run. There are more waiting for justice." "You sound distraught, Gabriel. Don't you agree with our father?" "I do. I just wish there would be a way without shedding so much blood. Don't you think they deserve redemption, Uriel? They are tainted. There's no redemption for the tainted." The one called Gabriel sighed heavily. Inanna felt her heart give out when the Archangel's eyes seemed to look into hers through a crack in the wooden wall. "You are right," he said, still staring into her eyes with his brass-colored ones. "They are abominations." The sound of wings made her relax, albeit she waited until the battle was over and the angels were gone before journeying on. She looked at the dead body of her brother, feeling the heat of flames inside her soul, flames hotter than hellfire and blacker than the pit. The rain didn't stop even if the land was starting to flood, drowning all alive. She would drown too if she didn't find a way to replenish her powers. She was feeling hungry and tired already. Falling to her knees, she stared at the grey sky above. "Do you need help?" The voice of a young man sounded from in front of her. She couldn't open her eyes, even if the cold mud urged her to seek shelter. She could feel how someone carried her a long way through the rain. The next time she woke up, a fire was burning next to her. 6 other children sat in a small cave in the high mountains. Inanna could sense they were Nephilim, and she assumed they had sensed her powers as well, although they were weak. One of them with black eyes and curly black hair came closer. "What is your name?" "Inanna," she responded, looking at the other faces. They looked scared and some of them showed wounds that hadn't healed yet. "Are you their leader?" "I am Anu, son of Shazakiel. I gathered the ones of us who made it from the battlegrounds alive. I have to assume all the others are dead or out of my reach." "What happened to your powers?" he asked when she went closer to the fire. The terrible cold still sat in her bones, and the sound of the flood outside made her shiver. "I discarded them." One of the others gasped in shock at the explanation. "I had to escape from them." New anger rose up at the memory of Ataman dropping dead. She could still see the 2 angels in front of her mind's eye. Their image had burned itself into her soul. She would find them. She would find them and kill them, and if she had to drag down all of heaven. "Do you think we'll be safe, Anu?" a female Nephilim asked when a wave crashed into the mountains, making the rock quake and crumble. "We are above the clouds, Ninhulzak. We will make it." The female with the long brown hair stopped shaking at the reassurance, but her yellow eyes remained vigilant and wide. The storming flood was raging wildly until even Anu seemed to be uncertain of their safety. But the mountain held, and after months of wind and water, the weather calmed. Inanna still felt hunger gnaw at her, but she didn't starve. There obviously was still enough angelic essence left to prevent the death of a mortal. Anu was the first to go outside, investigating if the danger was over. With wings as black as his hair, he soared through the sky. Inanna was jealous at his special characteristic, which fate had denied to her. He was the only Nephilim inheriting wings from his angelic parent. When he returned, his face beamed with joy. The flood had gone. The land was turning green and brimming with life already. Carefully the group descended the high mountain. Feeling the young green grass beneath her bare feet, Inanna rejoiced. The sun was wonderfully warm after a long time of darkness. "What are we going to do now, Anu?" A Nephilim by the name of Utu, with brown hair braided and held together by golden strings, asked Anu. Ninhursag, holding a magpie in her palm of her hand, answered dreamily. The first feather was already grazing her hair. "Why not settle down? I'd love to get to know Earth's creatures." Utu seemed to like the idea, for he smiled warmly at the thought when a soft breeze ruffled his white robe. "I did not plan to seek revenge on the archangels," Anu announced. "I want us to live in peace, like our parents intended." "Not all our parents intended to live in peace," Nana, a tall Nephilim with hair colored like the moon, reminded the others. "I want to honor my father's memory, and he was peaceful," Anu said with a gentle emphasis. Nana inclined his head as a sign of respect. "You saved us from the flood and the storm," Enki, a Nephilim with white hair and green-blue garments, spoke up. "You should lead us through the new world." The one next to Enki finished the sentence. With hair as red as autumn leaves, Enlil wore warm brown garments. "If that is your all desire, I will lead you," Anu answered, looking at each one. "What do you say, Nana?" Ninhursag addressed the only Nephilim that hadn't voiced her opinion yet. She could feel the hate burning inside of her. The others were fools trying to live in peace with mortals, but without their help she would never be able to remain unnoticed until she would be ready to get her revenge. "I agree with the others," she said, choosing her vague answer on purpose. "Lead us." Using another spell, she said the words, hoping this time it would work. Beneath her, chained to a table made of stone in her private hideout, lay the angel Decariel. He had just been unfortunate, crossing the earthly realm as he patrolled the border to heaven. Inanna had been quick and clever, overpowering the angel before he could escape or call for help. He was covered in scars and bleeding from several wounds. Annoyed by his whining and pleading, she had gagged him. She couldn't stand it. It had been fine as long as he had only promised her righteous revenge, but as soon as tears of pain had started to indicate his broken will, she needed to silence him. In her hand she held the angel's weapon. It was the only thing that could give him the wounds that would not heal shut in a few seconds. She had used all the spells she could find on Earth, but none of them refined the angel's blood so that it would grant her the power she longed for. Closing the book shut, she let it fall to the ground. The sudden sound of the impact that Decariel flinched in his miserable state. "You stay here and don't move." She grinned at the irony of her words when she left the angel alone. No one knew about the small realm she had created with magic. It was her secret laboratory, where she conducted experiments on the angel until she would find a way to replenish and perhaps even enhance her powers. Decariel would only be the first. Once she had solved the riddle, she would look for the archangels who had murdered her brother, and she would look for Micah himself. She would make him suffer as her father was suffering in the darkest pit below hell. Stepping through a mirror, she found herself in her private quarters. Years had passed, and the 7 Nephilim had become gods worshipped by the mortals. Anu had refused at first, but mortals were too simple to just let it go. The benevolent deeds of the Nephilim forced their pitiful souls to fall to their knees. Inanna herself didn't mind. Those humans were weak. Why shouldn't they serve those more powerful? It had taken her a few years of research and experimenting, but in the end she had found the cure. Decariel was still her test subject, and as long as she was still without her angel powers, she kept him alive. She couldn't afford to test her luck by killing the one angel fate had let fall into her lap. The angel was barely conscious after she had branded him with several symbols. She would have liked to combine them into one, but that hadn't worked. She had to use each on its own. Yet the combined result should turn the blood into a mere bearer of the angel's power, letting her absorb it easily upon consumption. The carrier stared at the ceiling, the eyes glazed with pain. "Almost done," she said enthusiastically. It had to work this time. She had used human spells the first times, human spells and human symbols. It had been foolish to use mortal magic on an immortal being. The symbols she used now were derived from the Enochian symbols. She had reverted their purpose by making a few adjustments, sparked by her own intention. She had done the same to the Enochian spells. The language now had a darker tone, but that was none of her concern. Only angels could wound angels, and only angel magic could harm them. As soon as she started chanting the tainted words, the marks from the hot iron along the angel's arms, legs, and torso glowed in a bloody red. The carrier grew tense and strained the chains, but she had enforced them with magic as well. The whole complex was her realm, and inherited hell's spark. The carrier was powerless against the pain surging through his veins. Taking the angel's weapon, she cut open his inner forearm from elbow to wrist. The blood was caught by a large amphora. Unable to wait, she dipped her finger into it. The moment the liquid touched her tongue, she could feel the rush of 1,000 suns fill her entire being, and the ties she had cut so long ago grew back stronger than before. Inanna! Utu, god of justice and the sun by the mortals, and the son of Barakia, called out from his throne. Inanna was sitting on her own throne, only 2 seats from him. The 7 gods were equal, and thus each had a seat in the large circular room. Only Anu's throne indicated him being their leader by being crowned by an eagle, although it was purely sentimental from the other Nephilim. Inanna was only smiling confidently at the Nephilim with the brown braided beard. One hand supported her head, the other rested in her lap. Her olive-green eyes scanned the room. The other 6 faces showed disdain, shock, anger, and especially Anu's showed the pain of betrayal. Her little experiments with angels had finally come to light. Although she had been cautious, the carrying of unconscious angels was bound to be noticed by the others. Those peace-loving fools really held on to the notion that their existence would continue like that forever. "It is forbidden for us to harm other creatures, be they human, beast, or angel," Utu continued with justified anger, making his voice thunder. "Do you have anything to say for yourself, Inanna?" Anu's voice sounded icy through the room. "When we survived the flood," she started, "you all fell in love with your idea of peace. We were young and sore and still children. We built an empire and the mortals kneel when we turn our heads. They would do whatever we ask of them." Inanna got up and paced through the room around the lake in the center. She looked at the grown Nephilim. Ninhursag with her love for nature, Nanna as much a moon worshipper as his father Saviour had been, Enki interested only in the sea, and Enlil equally engrossed by storm and wind. Of course, Utu preaching justice but refusing her revenge. And then there was Anu, the greatest stain of them all on the pride of the Nephilim. "We sit on a throne, in a keep, in the sky, invisible and hidden from mortals and angels alike. Because of what?" She bowed to lock eyes with Anu, who kept sitting calmly on his throne, although his eyes showed a dangerous glint. "Because we are gods to the humans, and we act like all gods. Act like the Watchers our parents were supposed to." The ridiculous reply let her temper cook over. "You hide!" she boomed, turning around to the others in the room. "You hide because you are cowards and fools. We could live in the open if we would become more powerful. We could tear down heaven and make them pay for their crimes." None of the others spoke a word. They were too taken aback by her ambition. by her hatred. Is that what you're doing by sacrificing angels? Anu asked from behind, barely keeping the disgust out of his voice. We could free our parents and claim this world. We could free Samyasa. Our parents, Anu answered with the authority of a leader, are imprisoned, paying for their sins. Some did not deserve it, but it is not us who should interfere with their father's judgment. Silence followed, in which Anu got up and spread his black wings, gripping her shoulder. Samyasa must never be freed. I hoped his daughter would show me that he isn't pure evil madness. Inanna clenched her fists when she heard the insult spoken by the son of one of her father's subordinates. I will therefore pronounce judgment as God pronounced judgment over Samyasa. Inanna still had her back turned to her leader when she sensed him drawing his blade to strike her dead. With lightning speed she spun around, drawing her scimitar in the process and burying it in the Nephilim's stomach. She saw how the color escaped his face and his legs gave in, causing him to sink back down on his throne. Twisting the blade, she pulled it out. The others were enraged and shocked at the same time, drawing their weapons to follow their leader's last command. But they were slow after centuries of peace. None of them had kept his skills sharp. Before Enki, sitting on the left from Anu, could jump to his feet, Inanna cut diagonally down across his chest. Enlil, sitting on the other side, received a kick that made him lose balance and fall back on his seat. Not hesitating, she slit his throat. Ninhursag fired an arrow, but Inanna cut it mid-air. Moving the blade in a vertical circular motion, she parried Utu's blade and drew Nana's dagger from the Nephilim's old belt. Before the god of wisdom could slash with his sword, she launched forward, sinking her blade into Nana's chest. At the same time, the dagger in her other hand found its mark between Utu's ribs. Nana fell backward onto his throne, whilst Utu needed a death blow to remain in his. Ninhursag charged at her, uttering a war cry and thrusting with her lance. Inanna dodged the weapon, gripped the shaft and tugged at it. The goddess of the wild didn't let go of the lance, but was too weak to stand her ground. The strong, jerky movement forced her forward and into Inanna's blood-stained scimitar. Still wrestling with death and struggling to breathe with her damaged lungs, Ninhursag was carried to her respective throne. Inanna waited until the Nephilim's eyes grew glassy and stared into nothing. The last surviving god turned around. She was surrounded by broken gazes. The great room had always been her favorite. She could use it as the main entrance to her complex. Perhaps it was time for some architectural changes. You won't mind that, will you? She cynically asked the dead Nephilim around her. A satisfied grin spread at the silence. That's what I thought. You can stay and witness my triumph, and you will see how foolish you were.